Well, hello everyone. How is everyone doing? I hope everybody's enjoying. I think it's been kind of pleasant weather. It's a little too hot for me these days, but
It's good for Texas.
it's good.
A
And I'm this guy,
couple of tornadoes blew by, but other than that, we're okay.
all these people on social media this winter who are like, "Oh, I need summer. I need summer." And I'm the opposite guy. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I like the cold.
if we can keep it 40 to 50, I'm actually pretty good with
Yeah,
that most of the time. I like sun, but anyway, Mike, how are you?
doing well, my friend, doing
Good,
well.
good. I'm Derek. This is our friend Mike, and we are just going to talk a little bit more about things. This is Ask Mike. That's what we call this. So I got a couple of questions for Mike today. Our goal is to share experience,
Hmm.
is to share. You could do that, but let me tell you how that worked out for me.
Hmm.
If that's the way we
Good
got to
and
go with
bad.
it.
Yeah, good and
Um,
bad.
so we just did a three-part. I don't know if you call it a series, but we did three separate conversations talking about ending the year right and things that we can do to be successful about that. And I'm one of those guys. I don't know about you, but when I'm driving in a car, I think a lot. That's where I get a lot of my deep thoughts from
Hmm.
from Derek come while I'm driving across Texas. And so the other day I was remembering, back in my early part of my music retail store career, I was what we call an education rep or the road rep, or our God bless Billy Lindsay used to call us the road toads. So,
Yeah.
but we spent a lot of time behind it. One of the things that I remember doing at this time of the year was like I'd get called and say, "Hey, man, we're doing drum major auditions, or we're having squad leader auditions,"
Hmm.
or and then I was there's all kinds of things that happen at this time of the year as we get ready for next year, officers for your band, um, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, is there any advice that you have, or is there any best practices that you remember from your time teaching? I came at it from, I was asked to judge, so I
Hmm.
would show up and do the best I could to be a fair judge and
Right.
move on. And never really thought about it. I didn't have to be there after the results or any of that other stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
thoughts or
Oh yeah, definitely. For me personally, I was always more nervous about the auditions for drum majors, section leaders than I was UIL contest. Because
really?
UIL contest, we had months to prepare and
Right.
we operated as a team. Now, in music, it's different than being an accountant or
Sure.
something because when you criticize some student's ability as a drum major, you're not criticizing their ability, they feel it as you're criticizing them because
Sure.
our music is a part of our body. It's our baby.
Right.
So we do it. So, and through the years, there was always stress in that. And just through the years, I tried to figure out ways from stealing from other teachers that I could eliminate a lot of that stress.
Well, and listen, I'll be the guy that says this. This is not Mike Lundy. This is Derek saying this. I don't know that we haven't cultivated societal norms of everybody's a winner, and we forget that
Hmm.
it's it doesn't mean you're bad if you don't win.
Right.
It means that that person might be better at this point in time.
Yes.
So, but I get how people can say, "Oh, you hate me."
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of how we.
Or I've had kids at the end of a drum major audition quit band
No.
because they felt like they should have been in that position. And that was early in my career. And I've kind of figured it out as it went along. And I kind of have a system that I use that I think eliminates a lot of that and helps the students deal with the success and when they don't succeed.
All right, ask Mike. How do we do
All
that?
right, how do we do that? I think, it sounds so cliche, but it's communication. You
Okay.
talk to them before the event happens. You talk to them about the level of ability of all the people that are auditioning. You talk to them about certain people have certain strengths. Some people don't have those strengths, but they have other strengths, so I have to rely on that. And then through the process, we would send out an email, or I would brief them in advance and just talk to them about their situation, what they're doing, what their goals are for the band. We called it an interview, and I guess it was.
Sure.
But in most cases, it was actually helping them to deal with the potential of winning or losing.
And I'm guessing, I would, well, I'll be not presumptuous, but surely there was something listed. These are the qualities that we're looking for, and these are the skills that you have to be that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because early in my career, it was just like, we're going to have auditions for drum major.
Everybody show up. It'll be
Everybody
great.
show up. And then I figured out that, people don't even know what the job is. So you've got to communicate exactly what your expectations are for the drum major, their musical level, their leadership level, their discipline level, things of that nature, to kind of make sure that they understand. Once I started doing that, some of the kids filtered themselves out of the process because I knew they'd been had been a disciplinary problem in the school or whatever, and said, oh, well, I don't really have a chance. But if I never communicated any of that, they would have auditioned and then felt like they were wronged
Sure.
because they might have been the best conductor.
Well, let me, again, I'm going to be conscious of this and not make a long story out of it, but some transparency. When I was in high school band, trumpet player, pretty sure not only was my instrument the God-given leadership position of the band, but I was pretty confident in myself as well. But here's the truth. I'd never had any real leadership training. Nobody sat down and said, this is what a leader is, this is
Right.
what a leader does. In my mind, and this is absolutely wrong, that was more of a popularity thing. And so I got nominated for president of the band my senior year, that right at this time of my junior year.
Yeah.
And I didn't really expect it, but once it happened, I was like, cool, people like me. And as we went into the year, I really didn't know how to lead. I didn't, and my director would call and say, are you going to have a leadership meeting? Are y'all going to do things? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What do you mean, am I going to do those? And so the bottom line is I was a terrible band president. I really was very bad. I apologize to everybody in that band for that year. But at the same time, I didn't know what the expectations were.
Right.
I didn't know necessarily. And I probably would have been smart enough, even as a junior, to say, I work full time after school. I don't know that I'm your best. I don't have that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was my longest short story, but
Yeah.
Agree, disagree, or?
Oh, I definitely agree because if the students know through communication what the position entails, they're smart. They'll figure out, hey, I work 40 hours a week at a pizza place because I'm trying to earn money. I can't do this position.
Right, and it would have saved me. I was embarrassed a lot at my shortcomings, thinking that I was failing when I just didn't even know what I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
So anyway, that's back to that list, and that's kind of a personal thing for me. Expectations up front.
Yes.
Now let's have an honest look before we actually go through all this. Is that something you're willing to do or can do?
Yes. And then when the auditions were over, you've got the kids that have won the position.
Sure.
And then depending on the size of the school, we would have 25 kids trying out for 2 drum major spots. So you've got 23 that are disappointed. And so I would first try to reach out to those that I felt were kind of in danger. You know what I mean? That you could tell it really affected them greatly. And we would go through and I would talk to each one of those students individually. And some of the things I would ask, even the ones who were successful in it, I would ask if you earned the position of drum major or section leader or load crew master, whatever, you need to accept your success with some humility,
with grace,
and some goodwill and grace, and that you don't lord this over people, and that your job as a leader is to be a servant. So we go through that process. That's usually not too hard to facilitate because you've got the best kids at the top that have prepared well. The ones that did not earn a position, those are the ones you've really got to communicate with because you want them to be a valued part of your program, and you don't want them, because like I mentioned a second ago, I've had kids who have quit band because they didn't make drum major or section leader.
Sure.
And then I figured out ways to kind of talk them through that process. One is, don't act like you feel sorry for them, if that makes sense.
As
you're
the
not
director.
there. Yeah, as the director. You're
Or
not
the
feeling
teacher.
sorry for them. You're there to help them. You're there to help them. If the answer was no, said some things you can ask them, was my audition my best work? Sometimes just being really honest, they'll go, well, no, not really. So
we're asking the kids.
asking the kids
feel
this.
like
You do
that
feel
was
like
your-
this audition was your best work? Did I seek feedback on my audition preparation before my audition
See,
from
that's
somebody?
great.
So if not, is it possible there could have been areas for improvement in my audition that I didn't know about? makes kids start to think that, no, I really didn't go to anybody. And then the kids who succeeded generally would come to staff members, or more importantly, go to past drum majors
Sure.
and say, let me go through this interview with you, kind of thing. I understand it's detrimental to the health of the team to tear down those who may have received a position I wanted or the directors.
Wow.
We talked to them about, if you didn't win this position, you need to understand as part of our team, it's not healthy for us for you to belittle anyone else who's in that position. We've got to all be in consensus now. We've got to figure it out. But these audition debriefs, we would facilitate those. Every once in a while when that was over, we'd have a student that still wanted to meet again. And that was perfectly fine. But I made it a point never to meet with a student the second time until 48 hours after the audition.
Give it time to.
Give time to settle.
Yep.
And then if the parent wanted to meet, it was always after I talked to the student. I made it a point to the parents that, now I want to speak to your son or daughter first, and then we'll schedule a time the next day to speak to you as parents with the student there. And that alleviated a lot of things. And excuse me. But in today's society, things happen so quick that
Sure.
emotionally they get charged up. If you give them 48 hours, sometimes they start talking to their friends, and their friends kind of talk them off the cliff.
Right.
Kind
But I
of
was and the flip side of that too, I think so much of this is important because I watch this a lot, and it's frustrating, or I don't want to say it saddens me, but we kind of live in a mob mentality world now, where you can throw something out in a social media format of your injustice or what you feel like you were wronged for, and suddenly everybody's who has no knowledge of the situation.
Right.
The kind of the mob gang on thing. So I think a lot of this is wisdom to help prevent some of that.
Yeah, and everything we did in our audition process, whether it's by judges, staff members, myself, everything was documented.
Okay.
So I could sit there and I could take the piece of paper and turn it around and go, these are the things we thought you did really, really well when you're trying out for section leader. These are the things I think we need improvement on. And we'd go through those items. And it's not that they're always going to agree with us.
And I really
But
enjoy
9
that
out of 10
language
will agree.
too. You did not say, "Hey, you didn't because you were really bad at it." No. Let's talk about the things you did well.
Yeah. And let's
And
talk
then
about
here's some
where we need to
stuff
improve.
that we need to improve. We all need to improve. These
Yeah.
just happen to be the steps that you need to improve.
And the way I really built that confidence with the kids was I did my own leadership training with them. And there was one question in our leadership training: if you were the band director, what things would you have changed this year and how would you do it?
Sure.
So basically, what's that asking? You're going to do the same thing to me.
Exactly.
As a kid, you're going to turn that paper around and go, Mr. Laney, these are the things we thought you did really well.
Sure.
But these things I think we need to do differently. And here's how I would do it if I were the band director. Man, I learned a lot because those kids are smart.
Sure.
So
it also-
they understood when I did it to them, they were like, well, it's the
And
same
plus
thing
it's
he
a
does with
two-way.
us. Yeah. We're being respectful of each other in that manner. It's not me being the all-knowing leader telling them what to do. It's like, no, we're helping each other here.
Right.
What are my shortcomings? We don't go through all of my shortcomings there because it'd probably take too long, so many of them. But we did that in the leadership thing.
But there's another side of that too, that it actually makes them stop and critically think about, is that just something I didn't like, or is this actually something that needs to be addressed?
Right.
So I think that's great.
And coming back to that documentation, I think that directors need to realize that, and I don't know if this is a legal issue, I was told it was by my administration, but anything we have as judges' documentation, my notes, teacher evaluation forms, that is all open records.
Okay.
Not to everybody, not to the news station, but to that parent and to that child. They can request it. I want to see all. So we would go through, if it was the drum majors, I'd go through every one of those documents, my notes, everything, however far they wanted to go in that process. So just be aware that the days of when we used to have our auditions and then we destroy all documentation and just tell the kid, oh, this kid won, this kid didn't win.
So
That wasn't. That's how we used to do it.
Right.
But nowadays you got to retain all that stuff. It sits in a file cabinet. I would keep it for a full year.
Wow. Because I'm going to tell you, even, we're talking the 90s.
Yeah.
When I would drive around and help people judge, I would just check or keep a mental. I'd write it down, but this person was best to me. And no explanation of why or why not.
Right.
Just I like those two best. That's my opinion.
Yes. And people approach it differently. There's there's band directors that don't use judges. No problem with that because the athletic director selects his quarterback.
Right.
Some people use judges. I was kind of an in-between person. I used a panel of judges for my drum majors, but I was very upfront with my drum majors candidates, saying that I have these 3 judges coming in. They're going to give me their opinion. They're going to fill out sheets. I'm going to use that as part of my decision. But the decision at the end of the day is going to be by Mike Luddy.
Bottom line.
Yeah, it's these judges aren't picking the drum major. They're here to help me pick the drum major.
Okay,
So the kids knew that.
I'm gonna try and keep both of us out of trouble with this question, but I do think it's pertinent because I'm trying to help people.
Yeah.
During the audit, there has to be more than just, do they bark like a drum major? Can they give commands? You spent the entire last year, and you know their ability, their responsibility levels. Are they on time? Are they actually leaders? Are they kind? Are they all the criteria that is set up
We see the bigger picture. through
that
the
people who
director.
show up for one afternoon don't see?
Yes.
So that should factor into this decision. I mean,
Yes.
this is a leader.
And that's how I justified it, you know.
Right.
And the kids were fine with it. And then the second half of that is some people, some directors really like to like post it on the band hall door a day later, or they put it onto social media that evening. Nothing wrong with that. I respect that. I kind of took a different approach. When they tried out, they knew before they left the band hall. I would line them all up, sit them all down, and I'd go, okay, you know, congratulate them for all their hard work, everything they've done, and say, the following 3 people are going to be our drum majors for next year. And I would announce those. And that way it kind of like pull the bandage off.
Sure.
You know, so they're not thinking about it so much. And then you start going, now I've got a sign up sheet on my office door. Said if you would like if you especially want to talk about something in the audition process, sign here. I'll meet with you in 24 hours. And then 48 hours for parents. It just seemed like the system worked and there was less, I don't know, it's more miscommunication than it is.
Exactly.
Is this kid good enough? Because
So I'm not trying to get bogged down here, but I'm learning. This is how I
Okay.
learn. In my mind, as we talk, it almost seems like if we don't do some of this, we create a lack of credibility with everyone. That person, we know that person, and that person really isn't the best leader for this group. Kids aren't stupid.
Yeah, you're right. And I would have the judges ask questions. We had an interview portion when we auditioned. And one of the questions I always loved in there, and it's an age-old question. If you could not be drum major, who would be the best candidate? And you kind of keep track of that. And it's interesting how a group of 25 kids, they will tell you the 1 or 2 people.
They probably narrow it down.
They narrow
You
it
just-
down to 1 or 2
Yeah.
people, you know, because John would be the best candidate if I couldn't do it. So, well, why? Well, because he's a really good musician. He was in the all-state band, or he's a really good leader, or he listens well, he communicates well, he's always at
Always
rehearsal
here,
on time. You know, so they know.
Sure.
And so if you allow only the judges to pick, then they might pick someone who the kids will go, really? Said he's late to every rehearsal. You know?
Right. And I liken it back to
So we try to combine the two systems.
even core classes. I was a tester.
Yeah.
You throw a test down. If I was in class and I heard you talk, I could pass that test and not even worry about
Oh
it.
yeah.
Did I do my homework? It's, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and we used to say this all the time too. Charm can win something, but character keeps you there.
Yeah,
I think that kind of applies in some
it
of this too.
does. And this whole process, we talked mainly about drum majors so far, but this goes all the way down. I would teach for most years all of my beginning all my beginning brass, and I had a real simple sheet. It was a little rubric and it had 4 slots, and each was worth 25. And it was posture and position. It was
Sorry.
tapping your foot, tone quality, and last was notes and rhythms. So if you just tapped your foot, even incorrectly, and held your horn correctly and sat up straight, you're already at a 75 in beginner band. And so I would have a clipboard and I would write down there playing, I'm writing out notes, assigning point values. I do the points at the bottom, write on separate clipboard, and I give them that sheet. And it says, you need to get your teeth apart, you need to use more air, you're rushing your eighth notes, or you got a really beautiful tone quality, great posture and position. What nice hand position on that trumpet. You know, so it gives them something tangible.
But remember to tap your foot.
Yeah, but remember to tap your foot. You lost points on tapping your foot. And that was so much better than the old days of they just played and you'd go 95.
Right.
And then, that was my chance to hear them individually because I'd have 95 to 110 beginning brass players in 3 periods,
Wow.
spread across
Yeah.
3 periods. So you don't have a lot of time to listen to every trombone play. But on the test day, we took time enough to fill out that form. But the reason I bring that up is because that form went to them. But then if a parent, believe it or not, you probably would believe this, a parent would be upset because in those days I did chair test.
Sure.
So if the kid wasn't first chair horn, the parent would call, and I never got yelled at by a parent, luckily, but they'd go,
Looking for bias, though.
yeah, they'd say, oh, Mr. Lunny, we just have a few questions. It always just starts that way. How come my child, he said he did really, really well. I said, does he have that sheet of paper I gave him? Yeah. Well, read that sheet of paper back to me. Ah, well, that's why.
Yeah.
And usually they're like, oh, that makes sense. I've never seen this piece of paper.
Well, he didn't tell me that.
Yeah, they just, and
Or
we're all
she,
we're all
or-
the same way. They came home upset.
Sure.
And moms and dads don't want their kids upset. If I make a bad rating in contest, I come home upset.
Right.
Just we're humans. So sometimes we've got to go to the parent and go, here are the reasons. And then we can discuss and argue, debate, whatever you want to call it, past that point. But generally, 99 times out of 100, that solved the problem because I took time to have a sheet of paper
Sure.
to give them instead of them going, well, what was he lacking? I listened to 95 tests today. I really don't know.
The second part of that too is that it's great for the student, my opinion, because we realize. Listen, Mike. Again, I don't know why I'm feeling so transparent today. I was a pretty talented person. I wasn't a very disciplined person.
Okay.
And so
that's the definition of a trumpet player.
as a young musician, I could make some really pretty sounds.
Yeah.
But I just didn't like to practice.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, I kind of skated through a lot of middle school, junior high, high school years on talent. And when I got to college, it was a whole new world.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean I'm not the best person just because I walked in?
Yeah.
Again, trumpet.
Exactly. Yeah.
But these guys are up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing scales and
yeah.
practicing etudes. And I'd show up to studio and be like,
yeah. And with these little rubric sheets, I never realized how important they were to the kids until at the end of the year, we always had binders. It was like $2 for a binder and the kid. But then at the end of the year, they hardly ever took them home. We would just take them and trash them, because we'd buy new ones for the next year because they were all worn out. But it was amazing. The kids that would make like hundreds on their little rubric sheet, they would all be like inside the folder. They'd saved them all for like 20 of them, and then, the kids who made like a 30 didn't save them as well.
Say they weren't in there.
And,
but I guess that's my point. It teaches us that it's more of a real life scenario, and it's a great teaching tool for them, not just in band, orchestra, choir.
Yeah.
In life.
Yeah.
There is, whether it's written down or not, there is going to be differentiators.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not how talented you are.
Right.
Did you do the things we asked you to do? Did you tap your foot? Are you holding your horn correctly? Those things matter.
Yeah. And I want to throw this out. It's not necessarily an audition thing, but my last 5 or 6 years, I did away with chair test in my beginner band.
Okay.
And I found my rubric sheets, the scores were raised by like 50%.
Oh, well?
Because when we did chair test, it slotted the kids really quickly in 6th grade, and that bottom half of the trumpet section just figured, why even worry about it? Well, then it became a deal of, there's no chair test here. We're just going to sit in 3 rows, and those rows will rotate every week.
Right.
And we'll just rotate the chairs, and it's not a big deal. We all play the same part. But it was amazing how the ones at the top still had the good players. But he had that middle part, they became so much better. And there were still a few kids at the bottom that, I guess they were in band because mama made them or something, but they were good kids, but they just didn't quite, it was what it was, that's life.
Right.
But that middle, we got a bigger middle crew that went on to be 7th graders.
You are really touching nerves with me on this in a positive way. Because I can remember, in Midland, beginning cornet class, thank the Lord that we were still in homogeneous classes, but there's probably 40 of us in that class.
Yeah.
And again, for whatever reason, I was typically in the top end of that. And I can remember when we would go down we play in front of each other.
That's right. That's how we did it too.
And so I remember that was just long, painful. And I know that wasn't encouraging to some of those kids.
Yeah.
that they were just like, number one, I'm embarrassed. Number two, all the other kids are snickering and or
Yeah.
falling asleep. And so I just think that's a great thing.
Yeah. And what we did at the end of it, I would have a little sheet of paper that I'd pass out to a little slip, and the kids would write who they thought the top 3 auditioning
yeah.
kids were. And they'd write down those 3, and then I'd pick them all up. And the next day I'd take, take the votes, and then they'd get like a Snickers bar or a Coke, and they wouldn't have to work that period. They'd sit to the side and play on their phone. Sorry, principals. They'd play on their phone. They didn't have to work that day because they were voted by their team as they were the outstanding auditionee for the day.
Cool.
But there was no first chair, second chair, third. Now that has to happen later. I mean, that's part of being in band and life. But, sometimes I think we push that too hard with, competitive auditions. Who's the section leader of the beginning trumpets? Give me a break.
Right. So let me ask you, and I don't want you to, I'm sure there's other things you, but I'm just curious.
Okay.
We would do these auditions. I went through this all the time, and I was always, again, towards the top. But as an adult and as a person who's tried to work with other groups, sometimes if you've got your best 10, 15% of the people on one part,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
don't the other parts by definition suffer?
Yeah. I think the classiest non-competitive moment was when a kid came up to me after the 3rd test. Not a really strong player. They'd made like a 76 by the 3rd test. And I said, well, and they said, hey, Mr. Lee, look what I made. And I thought they were going to be complaining. And I go, yeah, he made a 76. He goes, hey, for me, that's a world record. And I thought, that's why I'm doing it this way.
Perspective.
Because by the end of the year, he was making 90s.
That's great.
Now, if I had a competitive first chair, second chair, third chair, he'd have wallowed around at that 70 for the rest of his career as a 6th grader. But he knew that his only goal was to be better than he was last week. I saw him progress to a 78, to an 83, to an 85. Then he dropped to an 80.
Right.
Then he'd go up to, finally it was a 90. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this kid, because I'm not comparing him to every other kid. He's comparing him to himself. He's got all those little rubric sheets for the whole year.
Yeah.
And he's going, these are the things I need to, I've got to tap my foot.
That's fantastic.
So that's my shout out to it is, it doesn't all have to be competitive.
But let me ask, again, I'm chasing this rabbit too hard.
Okay.
But how many times as an adjudicator have you written middle voices or, we got some problem down here in our low middle.
Yeah. It's second and third parts.
But we've created that mentality that
all that's important is first part.
All the good people are on first.
That's right.
And I remember directors apologizing. I'm sorry, I need you to cover that second part there. Well, why are you apologizing? That's part of the music.
Yeah. In fact, for our sight reading, this is kind of chasing the rabbit the other direction, but they had their chair order and concert contest on stage. And then we moved from the stage at Cooper to the sight reading room. I'd look at them and say, rearrange for sight reading. And then first chair trumpet was first chair. Second chair trumpet went to second part. Third chair went to third part, and they all just rearranged. And that way I had depth in all the sections for sight reading.
But that's not...
And they understood the purpose. It wasn't demoralizing. It was like...
Exactly.
I'm either the right tackle, or I'm the center, or I'm the receiver or the quarterback.
The composer wrote that part for a reason.
Yeah, and that's the most important part going on. Most bands have a first chair player.
Right.
Most bands.
Okay.
Most bands don't have a third part player.
Get me back on track. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right.
So we've been talking about documenting. We've been talking about the importance of explaining what the audition will be about in the first place. And it's not all just who's the best looking, best voice. There's other criteria involved.
Yes.
How about, and you said not just drum major, how about in section leaders or in different committees or groups that you need leadership in? I mean, is this all the things that you do auditions for?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we'd even call them auditions, but a selection process, maybe. But like for section leaders and load crew and uniform quartermasters, all those people, they would all sign up that they wanted that position. And then myself and the staff would go through and look at those names. Then we'd tell the kids, and they knew this was coming. So do we need like a half-page essay on why you think you're an adequate person for this job? And they would do that, and then we'd finalize it to like some finalists. They'd come in, we'd interview them. and then
Well, you
we'd
probably
figure
weeded
out.
out a ton of people just doing that.
Yeah, oh yeah, because they didn't want
I'm
to.
not going to write a paragraph.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so you figure out some of the people, just like everyone, every church and every band. There's people who just don't want to. They want the position, but they don't want to work. So you kind of weed those out. But then after that, it's a matter of just same thing, communicating. We had it detailed, everything that a uniform quartermaster did, everything that a load crew master did, everything that a inventory quartermaster did, librarians, their entire job. The kids knew it going in, and then we'd have to reiterate it, of course, as time went. But I think the main time I figured that out was really early in my career. I'd chosen my drum majors. The next year, I was complaining to my mentor, Greg Miller, in Iowa Park, because I was in Electra, and they were only 15 miles away, and he was my band director, my beginning band director and high school band director, still my mentor of all time. But I said, my drum major just, I don't know, we get to a game, and then she just gets in front of the mirror and primps and just sits around and talks to me. She doesn't, he goes, have you told her what you want her to do? No, I haven't.
I assumed she knew that.
That's right. Yeah. And we know what that brings.
Right.
So he goes, it's such a great mentor. He goes, well, just sit her down and tell her what she's supposed to do at the games. I go, oh,
Wow, that's deep.
thank you, Mr. Miller. Sometimes the most common thing just slap us in the face. It's like, why does that kid not behave right? Have you told them what they're supposed to do? No.
But that's my exact point.
Yeah.
My band president experience.
Yes.
I just thought I was there to look cool.
Yeah, you thought
And I
you were
got that
arm
nailed.
candy.
I got that one down. Watch me twirl my trumpet.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. Yeah, and that's so true. It's so true. But at the end of the process, we just have to figure out a way. We can't soothe all the feelings. We've got to figure out a way to communicate the information to them about what the position entails. We've got to make sure they understand the audition or selection process, because that causes problems.
Sure.
They feel like they got shorted because they didn't know about the essay until the day before. So make sure all
That makes
that's
sense.
all given to them. And then at the end, kind of debrief through the process of, the ones who won and the ones who didn't win, and talk about where they can improve. And it was interesting. Another interesting fact about that for directors, I would have kids, I let them audition for drum majors early as a freshman.
Okay.
And a couple of times I had sophomore drum majors, would be selected. But the cool part was, before I did all this, if they didn't make it their freshman year or sophomore year, they just quit trying out. But it was amazing how many juniors and seniors had tried out their freshman and sophomore year, because they knew the process.
They
We'd
had
gone through
feedback.
it. Your conducting is not really very good, but you're a great musician. Said, can you come in for some lessons? Can I suggest some people to work with you? And they would just improve their craft. And then all of a sudden, their junior year, they were solid. Where prior to doing it this way, they would just, I guess I'm not drum major material.
But listen, I'll jump on that too, because so many times, I'm not advocating for rote teaching, but people, you read it, you hear it, until you see it, and you go, oh, now I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
And so it makes them more comfortable in the next, especially if they have that feedback from you.
Right.
No, and you say, how would you rate yourself?
Yes.
What do you think that you did well, or what do you think that you did?
And that's a great start question on the debriefing. Said, what did you think of your audition? Because then I know which direction to go. If they go, it's the best I've ever done, why was it not good enough? So you go this direction. You talk about what needs to happen. Or if they go, it just wasn't my best audition.
Well, or I just choked. I got nervous.
Yeah, I got choked. And I would tell them, said, what's the definition? People are nervous because they don't know what's about to happen. The more you practice, the more you know what's about to happen, so there's no need to be nervous. So now there's always going to be a butterfly or two. That's human nature. But if it's making you choke, then what we need to do is you need to set it up with about 4 other drum major candidates. And we go through the whole process, exactly the order it's going to go in, and said, get with those 5 and go through the process 15 times.
Right.
And judge each other. And they would do it.
That's great. Because another telling thing about me, I'm a fairly good mimic. If I hear somebody do it enough times, I can sound just like them. I still may not have any clue what I'm doing, but I can fake things.
Yeah.
And I think some of this helps eliminate. Now, were you just fake? And you don't ask them that question that way, but you understand what I mean. How did you perceive what you were doing? And you can just hear from their answers, they didn't really know what they were doing.
Right.
They were just doing what they thought. So here's where we can make that better and give you some comprehension.
Yes.
Mike, I hear this so much, and I hope you have something else and you shut me down if you do. like most of life, I feel like most confrontation or most situations, positive or negative, really boil down to one word, and that is communication.
Hmm.
And realizing that communication is not just me saying something
Yeah.
that isn't communicating. If you don't hear it, receive it, and understand what I said, then we didn't communicate.
Yes.
So I think so much of this lends itself to having adequate communication ahead of time,
Yes.
creating realistic expectations of what the audition process is and what the realistic results are going to be.
Hmm.
There's only two,
Yes.
or there's only one, or there's
Yeah.
a group.
And if you want to take that and elevate it for the directors, speaking directly to them, there's a lot of movement that goes around every year from job to job. You would probably, I don't know if you'd be shocked or not, but you might be shocked at how many resumes that I read through and how many mock fake interviews I do Zoom with directors who are looking for jobs, because I
Okay.
want to point out everything they say that I feel is a problem because they don't know it.
I know
So
what you were trying to say, but this is how I
but
perceived it.
it's our audition now.
Right.
We're band directors looking for a job, and only one's going to get hired. There might be 4 candidates. At the time I went to Wiley, there were about 70 candidates, and we whittled that thing down. And man, you better be on your A game if you even want to get into the finals.
Right.
With that. So it's a situation that even as directors, sometimes we don't acknowledge our mistakes. And I'll tell you a really kind of a funny one. I said, send me the cover letter and your resume as if you were applying at Wiley. And so they did a cover letter, sent it to me, and then it said, "Dear so and so, I'm seeking a position at San Saba." They forgot to proofread it.
Curious,
They
they
used a
didn't?
form letter, and I said, "Man, I tell you what, a lot of people would take your resume and cover letter.
Because you didn't
You
pay
didn't
enough
even take time
attention.
to." Yeah, I
Yeah.
said send your stuff to me and let me proof it, and send it to 5 other people and proof it. And if you want a mock audition, an interview, said call me. We'll set it up and do 20 minutes Zoom, and I'll at the end of it, and well, they'll answer a question. I'll go, time. That's the wrong answer. Like, how do we do discipline in our band program? Well, that the principal should take care of that for me. Chirk. No, no, no. Said you must give them a plan.
Right. And
So
according to the handbook.
yeah, right. So I know we kind of chased a rabbit, but I think it's an important rabbit to
No,
chase.
I do too. And I also think
Because
that
that audition, we audition as well.
one of
as
those
band
funny little
directors.
things that people say, but what you just said is tell me you don't pay attention to details without telling me
Yeah,
you don't pay attention to details. It's right here.
yeah.
You-
And it can be so easy to do because some of these positions they're sending out to 15, 20, 30 schools. And how easy it is to copy paste and then just forget, oh, I didn't change the name of the school, or, try to do some research on the school. And this might be a whole nother podcast,
Right.
how all these band directors moving around. What can I do to make myself the best candidate in an interview?
And my brain was still clicking back in there, trying to make sure that I'm honest enough to say how many times have I said, attach, please find, blah, 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 in an email and forget to put the attachment on there.
Right.
And I have to go back and go, okay, really, this time here's the attachment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm stupid. It means that I didn't stop and look and pay attention
Yeah.
and
And
do other things.
speaking of attachments, one thing to tell the directors if you're interviewing for different jobs, whenever you send them your information, make it all one attachment. Do not
Don't make
do
them open 10 different
resume,
things. Yeah.
references, because that gets confusing on the HR side of it. It's better just to have Mike Lunny, everything's one PDF doc, and they download it. So that'd be a great
Stuff's not that hard to do. You
right.
just got to think about it, and somebody's
Just
been
got
there
to
and
do
done
it.
that.
You got to do
You're
it.
right. That's probably another.
Yeah, we can tackle
So
that
wrap
another
this
time.
up for me. Is there anything else we need to add to this audition drama?
Well, not to add to it, but whatever system you use, just make sure the kids know exactly what's happening. Make sure the parents know what's happening. Make sure you do every student the same way.
I think that's very important.
Because like if you allow people to come in and watch, is it just their immediate family? Is it no one gets to come in and watch? Do all the kids get to watch and listen? Whatever it is, do it the same for everybody. Do they get to videotape? Do they not get to videotape? However you want to do it, just make sure it's the same for everybody. You'll always be stressed. Because we're dealing with people's feelings, but you've got to make it all the same for everybody and have a system that eliminates as much stress for us and for them.
John Wooden's pretty famous, and others, but John Wooden's pretty famous.
He's a hero of mine, yeah.
For saying, don't say you love everybody the same.
Right.
You don't.
We're not all created equal, no matter what people. We should all be treated equal.
But the process
but the process should be
should
equal.
be the same for
That's right.
everyone.
The process should be John Wooden at its best. You know, the process should be equal. We're not all equal. So I remember his quote: "If we were all equal, we'd all be intelligent, good-looking, and wealthy." Said we're not equal.
Right.
Said, but as a team, we can be incredible.
That's so good. And that's, I think, the bottom line to remember. What we're trying to do is make your program better.
Correct. And to grow those kids.
We're not trying to elevate two people over everybody else.
Right.
We're trying to help everybody in the process and make this group the best this program can be.
Yes.
So cool. Awesome stuff, man. All right. Ask Mike. Ask Mike at intunemusic.com if you got a question. And listen, we are open to maybe I shouldn't say that.
Anything band related.
Anything related to band, orchestra, choir.
We don't want to cross any lines
teaching,
here.
helping you be a better professional.
Yeah.
We're open to that. I mean, I don't think there's any. No, I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah.
As long as it fits that. But maybe we should write this out.
Yeah. And there are
Expectations.
things in our field that have such a heavy legal implication that it'd be reckless for us to pursue as a podcast.
Agreed. But I'll probably tell you that.
Yeah, we won't do it.
So ask Mike at intunemusic.com. Send us any questions as we get into the summertime. It's a great time to think about some questions to answer and do some of that. Also, I know that Mr. Lunny is open to helping just about anybody that needs help, so don't be shy. Let us know that. You can send the same email address. The form, I just want to tell you, the document that we talked about the last 3 weeks, probably still available. Rick will put that on the screen, Rick in the chair. Otherwise, we hope you have just an amazing week, an amazing rest of the school year. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
See you next time.
It's been fun.